Hello and welcome to the B2B Lead Roundtable. This is Brian Carroll. I'm excited to have our guest today, Steve Woods. He's the CTO and co-founder at Nudge.ai. But you also probably know Steve. He was the CTO and part of the founding of Eloqua. Today we're going to talk about how can you connect better with customers. We have all this technology, all these channels, all these ways of reaching customers, but actually building trusted connections has never been harder. So Steve, tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to start Nudge.
Sure thing. So you and I have known each other obviously for a long time, a few decades. So history prior to Nudge was Eloqua in the marketing space, and they're obviously a space you're very familiar with. You're working a lot with marketers, and really we were able to see this wonderful transition as marketing went from kind of an arts and craft discipline to a very, very measured lead generation, demand generation oriented discipline that started to connect with sales. Here are leads that are qualified, that are interested. And that was a wonderful transition to see. But looking over the fence at the world of sales, we realized that the core of getting those deals done was the next step. The core was getting the trust and the relationships and the breadth and depth of relationships at an organization that would then allow that deal to be moved forward, the trust and the empathy to be developed, and ultimately the deal to be closed based on those relationships. And as the Eloqua story was winding down, Paul and I decided to jump in and tackle relationship intelligence and use relationship intelligence as a way to understand where empathy is being built, where trust is being built, and how you can make a sales team more effective by focusing their efforts on the right initiatives. That's
really cool. And just how you took your story from where you were to what you're doing right now. So what are some of the lessons you've learned about building a company now versus when you were building Eloqua and thinking about, what you've learned over the past decade?
I think the thing that we were lucky with more than anything in Eloqua was being part of a major change in a space. Marketing going from unmeasured to measured, and all of the effects that had on the people and the processes and the technology and the understanding. And we were lucky to be a core part of that, and that helped us kind of flow along with that river. And I think what we were trying to do with Nudge was to be a little bit more proactive and say, what's going on at a macro level that is going to be a dominant theme of a space for the next decade. And looking at sales and looking at relationships, it became very, very clear that relationships, trust, empathy was the core thing, and it was unmeasurable. It was intuitive. Every sales leader, when you're talking about deal slippage, when you're talking about deal progress, when you're talking about your forecast, it's all about the relationships and the trust. But it's not measurable. It's self-reported by sales reps that often have kind of happy years on the process. And so we thought, if we can do that, if we can figure out how to put a measurement on trust, empathy, and relationships, and then build the tooling on top of that to help people drive the ship in the right direction based on that, then we're going to be part of a very, very interesting transition. And that's turned out to be true as you're seeing sort of the evolution of the sales space. It's been a really interesting place to find ourselves in the middle of.
Prior to us having our interview, we were just talking about some of the changes that have happened in sales and just what's been happening for our customer and how difficult it's gotten for people to get things done, including buying. And one of the things that got us reconnected is I read the post you wrote about holding the hustle. And, I just wanted to ask you, what inspired you to think about Hold the Hustle, and how's it influenced how you do your own outreach there at Nudge?
Absolutely. Yeah, that as with many things, it sort of stemmed from a rant, which is always a good place to start. And it's interesting, right? Because we're really working in this space of sales. So we spent a lot of time and developed a series called How I Buy that interviews buyers and how they actually go about buying.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, we spend a lot of time talking with salespeople on how they sell. And it was Mars and Venus, right? Buyers are all about, developing an understanding and kind of guiding themselves down a journey and selectively bringing in salespeople when they need some deeper points of view and really wanting them to be thoughtful co-conspirators on a journey. Then you talk with salespeople, and it was automation, it was numbers, it was 1,000 emails a day, it was, hey, did you get my last email sequences? It was all hustle, hustle, hustle. And it was bizarre to look at these and realize that they were attempting to describe the same animal.
Right.
And it was just, it was bizarre. And at the same time, you're seeing the effect of this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the first of these automated sequences, you receive them as an executive. Oh, look, it's diligent follow-up. They're following up. And you get those today, and I think my spam folder is filled with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of, hey, did you get my last email? So the rant of stop. We just have to stop this in sales. It's not working. It is not going to work. It's going downhill and is going to have to continue to go downhill. That developed into the hold the hustle thesis, and that's gotten a huge response. I think everyone intuitively got that, and we were able to luckily kind of articulate something that a lot of people were feeling of why the tooling that they were told to develop and employ just not driving at anything that even came close to building trust and empathy.
Yeah, and as part of my work interviewing customers, it's surprising how little impact marketing has in their own journey in terms of the marketing of the vendor, and how they're learning in the process. But what was particularly insightful, though, is what a difference the salesperson makes in the customer experience. And in terms of building trust, in terms of customers want to know the sales rep's their advocate. They want to know that they're talking to them straight. They're not pitching to them. And so as you've done your own outreach, or can you share any stories or any stories of people who've held the hustle and what they've seen, if they were doing it one way, and any changes you've noticed, or what's been the results?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at what buyers are looking for, it's that person to go along with them on a journey and challenge them, educate them, make them squint, turn their head sideways and look at a problem in a new light. That's what people want. The facts and information are all out there. Mm-hmm. What you're looking for as a buyer is not that. You can get that. You can go Google something, you can find any facts and information. What you want is the so what. Mm-hmm. What does it mean? What are the challenges? Where is it gonna work? Where is it not gonna work? And the salespeople who have been able to say, no, that's my job. My job is to challenge people. And they go deep on customer problems. They try and understand that aspect of the customer's world better than the customer. And they focus in on the right question. When you get hit with that question of, I didn't think about it that way. Okay, now I'm listening. Now there's an opportunity for us to talk. Because I didn't think about my own world in the way that you just asked about it. And so now the light bulb's gone off, and I realize that there's something more for me to learn. That's when that bar of trust starts to move forward. And it's the sales reps that really kind of come at it that way and find those opportunities to say, there's something going on in your world, Brian, and you're probably thinking about it this way, mm-hmm. and I'm going to push you to think about it that way. And here's why. And here's a story, and you're gonna maybe be a little uncomfortable with the story.
Yeah.
But it's going to give you some insight that you wouldn't have got just doing a Google search.
I like the word insight. And as I was listening to you, I thought that's everything you were just saying is helping your customer have that insight and finding that aha, because really, if we're going to drive change, and that's what people are doing when they decide to solve a problem or buy something, is change. And change is hard. And not only that, helping other people experience change is even harder, so how do we do that? And it sounds like a lot of the work you've been doing has been connecting the dots, helping people understand the relationships and to help them go through that journey. So as you think of automation, and you've been a part of this space for a long time, how do you see empathy and automation fitting together into how in sales marketing do outreach today?
That is the key question. And I think the answer is a little bit easier than it would seem, because the simple version of the answer is you can't automate empathy, you can't automate trust.
Yes.
But there's a lot of background work that goes into finding the opportunities to say, oh, there's a chance here that I can add a little bit of value to your world that you wouldn't have expected. To do that, I need to understand my world. I need to understand you, your history, your business, what's going on right now. And then I need to put those two together and insert a point of view in the conversation. And doing all of that background research to say what's happening right now with you, your journey in large, and your journey with my business in specific, and then map that to a point of view, that can be done through a lot of automation and AI. The conversation, hey Brian, saw this, thought that, here's what's going on, here's how you might want to think about it. That's a very human thing to do.
Right.
Up of it on a silver platter to say, here's where Brian's at, and these next steps on the journey might make sense based on all of this history and where he's at right now today. That can be facilitated by automation. And it's a lot of research and grunt work, and it can really be optimized a lot better and just tee up those silver platter moments.
That's the tricky thing, right? Is pulling together the right data and then also having empathy, which gives you that intuition or the insight to ultimately say, okay, emotionally, I've got more emotional intelligence of what the situation needs and what this person's looking for and what they're experiencing, and how are they going to have that next conversation, or what would be useful to share with them at this point in time. And what I was going to ask is, let's get really practical. Can you talk about any actionable tips or advice you've learned, through your own experience that could help sellers do better outreach right now?
Absolutely. I think the easiest step for anyone that's trying to build relationships is quite simply to look at those relationships and just say, where am I losing touch? Most people don't do that. You have the first conversation. If it goes to a deal, great. 90% of them don't, and they just drop off.
Right.
And it's very simple, and the best reps do this manually with Excel, or best reps used to do this manually with Excel spreadsheets. Now there's tooling. This is one of the things we focus on with Nudge, where you can say, look, just make sure I'm in touch with these people every 3 months. That's it. I just need to reach out. And that kind of puts a floor on your relationship building. But then the next point is, okay, I now need to develop this logical next step for where that person is on the journey that they're mapping out. So I need to understand what's going on in their world, what's happening with their company, what are the new recent events that have happened, if there have been any exec changes, and where are they at on their journey with my organization. So this is sort of an advancement of sort of the digital body language concept that you and I chatted about, over the last decade. Where are they at? What have they done? What have they looked at? Have they used a free trial? Did they get value out of it? Where are they at on that journey? And given all of those things, what can I kind of nudge them to do next to say, you're probably here and you're probably thinking this, but if you just did this one little thing, or thought about it in a different way, or looked at a data set that I'm going to send over to you, your perspective would evolve. And it's not a sales pitch. It's not, hey, let's do a 1 hour sales call. It's let me show you a new perspective that you might appreciate. And if you can do that, and you can guide them along this journey, what you're doing is pushing them forward on a journey, but you're also building trust. You haven't asked first, you've given first, and in doing so, you've built those little tiny nuggets of trust that eventually will guide you to be able to say, hey, let's do something here. I think you've gone down this journey. Your next step on the journey actually is to become a customer of ours. Here's what that would look like. We've built all this trust. Let's make this happen.
I love that. I think our audience were just to take those insights and apply them. And, as I was listening to you, I mean, there's two ways of building relationship. One is like we're having a conversation, we're dialoguing together. The second way is reciprocal altruism. And what it really means is we give something of value to someone without expecting anything in return. It doesn't feel like there's something attached to it. My intention is to help this person. To do that, I need to understand. And to do that, I need to understand where we at in our relationship, as you talked about, where they're at their journey, what are the questions they're dealing with, what might they be thinking about, what might they be feeling at this moment, so that I can actually help them and present what would be useful at that point in time, and so.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because I think there, where if you extend that train of thought, you get this really interesting challenge for the rest of the world of marketing, where marketing for the last decade has not focused as much as they could on those value-added nuggets.
Right.
That I, as a salesperson, can give to you when the moment is right and you're at that point on the journey. What is my give? And if a sales team doesn't have those gives, then they're kind of stuck with the, hey, let's set up a 60-minute sales call. Well, that's not a give. That's an ask. That's a big ask. So the answer is no. Whereas the evolution of marketing that we're seeing today in some of the top orgs is to be able to come up with those things that are actual gives. They're useful information, they're useful data sets, they're useful documents or whatever the case might be, or trials or experiences, that they're not traps. They're not kind of a half thing, but then you need to take a sales call to get the other half thing. They're actual gives that build trust and move a buyer along the relationship. And it's a really interesting challenge for marketing, and some that some marketers are really sort of getting into with quite a bit of gusto.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult unless someone is willing to think beyond my role as a marketer is to generate a lead or get an MQL. And, some people have called it full funnel marketing. Some people have called it revenue marketing. I think it's really about customer marketing and customer experience. And it starts with the first touch and throughout that. And it's having marketers see beyond that. The trust building, a lot of it's happening through that human being of the sales rep or the sales development rep. And what can I do to equip them so that every touch they have with that customer is a positive experience, is helpful. And that's really the best brand building, and all the other things that we want to have in marketing, brand and conversion and more opportunities and more pipeline. It's the things you talked about. It all starts with adding value. And to do that, it requires us to maybe take the pedal off, trying to focus on conversion all the time.
Yeah, I think too, the sort of the focus on conversion kind of made sense in the world that we were in 10 years ago, where a deal, if I can overgeneralize, a deal was a big moment in time, right?
Yeah.
The customer went from not a customer to a big 3-year contract, multiple $100,000. Now they are a customer, over the wall to CS, out of the world of sales. That's not the reality now. Mm-hmm. Most buying journeys look more like a ramp than a step function. Mm-hmm. You come in, maybe you're on a trial product, maybe you got one team, maybe you've got a month-to-month license, and then your experience grows and evolves and builds from there as you achieve success, as you go down that journey's pathway, and you ultimately become a very successful large enterprise client. But it's not a step function, it's a growth function. And if you as a marketing team are thinking forward like that, you're giving your, whether you call them sales teams, whether you call them account farmers, whether you call them customer success reps that have revenue responsibility, whatever they look like, whatever business card they hold, you've got to give them the tooling to help guide the buyers along that journey to become more and more and more deeply ingrained with your organization, more trusting and more successful.
Well, Steve, thank you. This has been fun. What's the best way for readers, listeners to get in touch with you?
I exist on all forms online. Steve.woods@nudge.ai. You should be able to find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. And nudge.ai is our website. So if you can't find me, you're not trying hard enough.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Brian.